The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Asset Management Awareness Month. This is our fourth presentation of the month, fourth of 5. My name is Scott Ray. I am the Vice President of Seminars and Events for the NPMA. Happy to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited today to have a presentation about professional development. And I thought that the title is really key here, sharpening your edge. Before we get in and turn it over to Ivonne, I just wanted to mention a few things about today's presentation. This is being recorded, and it will be available on the NPMA's YouTube page, probably in a couple weeks following today's presentation. Today's presentation is also eligible for a CEU, one CEU to be precise, and that CEU will be applied to your profile in the next couple of weeks as well. So just stay on the lookout for that. It won't happen immediately, but it will be in the next few weeks. The presentation today is available as a handout. It's available in the handout section of GoToWebinar. So please take a look at that if you'd like to take a copy of it home. And Ivonne, thank you for making that available to the attendees today. And last but not least, if you have questions, please go ahead and drop those into the question box. And Ivonne will be taking questions as they come in. So with that, I'm very excited for this presentation to see what Ivonne has to say about sharpening our edge. I think the one thing I think I've had a takeaway in every session we've had so far this year, and look forward to another amazing session. So with that, Ivonne, welcome in. Thank you so much for agreeing to present today. I will go ahead and have you do a brief intro of yourself, and I will turn it over to you.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. And by the way, I just noticed I have no idea how this happened, but the naming on the handout, I must have had my hand on some weird place on the keyboard. It looks really strange, so disregard the name and just roll with it. It's okay. Thanks for the invitation, Scott. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to participate in these events or similar like this. So welcome everyone, regardless of what time zone you're in. Good morning or good afternoon. And as Scott mentioned, my name is Ivonne Bachar. I'm the Senior Director for the Property Management Office at Stanford University, and currently serving as the Western Region Vice President for NPMA. So involvement on property from both sides of that equation, but it's really fun. Along the lines of the title of today's sessions, trying to think of how to characterize professional development just a little bit different. There's so many different angles that you can do and talk to about this topic. So I was thinking, what is it about professional development and why is it important? Yes, we always talk about it. It should be something we encourage as supervisors or managers for our teams, but also for ourselves individually, right? So we tend to think of it sometimes as, oh gosh, this is something I really should be doing, but I don't have time and all these aspects. But, there are little steps that we can all take along the way. I would say pay attention to the word essential, because continuing your professional development really, really is essential. And Lisa, let's take a look at what our roadmap is going to look like for today. I'm going to cover these areas during our talk this morning or this afternoon. And not necessarily in this perfect order. And I did that actually on purpose, because some of the session, I wanted to be more conversational. By the way, please feel free and type in any questions or comments, not just questions. If you have feedback or if you have an experience you need to share or would like to share about a particular area that we're talking about, I always welcome feedback and really learn both ways, right? Hopefully I can share information that's useful to you. And on the other side, we can all learn from you as we go through the process. So we'll talk a little bit about, what is it about the profession? I believe it was last week that Doug Getz presented at this event. and talked about the profession of property management, about NPMA as a resource for property professionals. And although, yes, we're talking about property professionals, I'd like to really have you think of today's session as applicable across the board, not exclusively for property management. As I think of the concepts that we'll be going through or presenting today, they really can apply in any position, really regardless of what level in the organization you are, whether you're a novice right out of school, or maybe you went to kind of a self-development and then went into a career. Really, the principles apply everywhere along the way. So, why is it important? Why should we be doing this? Why should we keep an open mindset and then validate some of those reasons why we should kind of tweak the plan, right? We can come up with a plan, we can come up with an idea, but just because we put something in place doesn't mean things don't change over time. Sharing a few of the resources and some strategies. And as I mentioned a minute ago, share some of those strategies for success or some of your quick wins that you've had over the years. So let's look at our perspectives as you, and you're going to see throughout the slides that I highlight the word you or your. Lisa, you can go to the next slide, please. Because this really focuses, I want to focus on the fact that this is something for each of us, right? It's something we need to take ownership of. Yes, our managers, our supervisors can give us all these opportunities and many different, goals that they may set for us in terms of performance expectations, but ultimately, we're in the driver's seat. We are in the driver's seat of our own professional development plan, and it's something that each of us can do. We will do it in our own way, in our own time, using whatever resources come our way, but don't be afraid to also expand beyond just that channel, right? Think of it from many different opportunities. So let's look at a few of the challenges that we face, and not to start with something from a negative perspective, but I mean, this is reality, right? So oftentimes, even when professional development is on our mind, it's part of our DNA, part of our everyday thought process, right? There are challenges that get in our way. Okay, sometimes it's where the priorities lie. Okay, having to set up a process where your work is not just a job, right? It becomes something that's meaningful to you. We all spend a lot of time at work. Whether we're working from home or working remotely or working a hybrid schedule, the amount of time over the span of our careers that we spend working is significant. So we want to be sure and make that as meaningful as possible. Yes, we're contributing to an organization, but we're also contributing to ourselves. And where does loyalty lie, right? We've heard a lot the last few years in terms of, organizations have no loyalty to their employees. Well, they do, maybe in a slightly different way than they did decades ago, but the fact remains we can help shape that in how it works for us and the benefits we individually get out of it, as in terms of our participation is reciprocal with opportunities that we may find along the way. And I just mentioned schedules, right? Things have been changing, although I don't know, sometimes it's changing a little back now to what we used to be in place of the workplace. But, we can work from anywhere. I'm coming to you today from a place totally across the country from where I live, and it's great. In fact, Scott, Lisa, and I, as we open this session today, we're in 3 different geographical places, and I would venture to say those of you logged online are from many other places. So lots of different changes from what might be considered a traditional setup, but, it's all good. We just find a way to make it work. And making sure that we have a work-life balance, very important. Last but not least in here, please highlight this, circle it, make a note to yourself, to what degree are you prepared to take ownership of your own or our own professional development? Because as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, you're in the driver's seat, right? It's up to you, you can make a path. Sometimes it's a little easier than others, but there's some decisions to be made along the way. And part of that starts with, Lisa, let's look at the next slide. Okay. I like to think of this as becoming fluid in what is the language of, in our case, property management, right? And you can hit the up arrow or the down arrow, Lisa, and there's a few things that'll populate there. Okay, you can do it, I think, one more time. There you go. So, oops, not quite, go back. There you go. So when you say become fluid in our language, and this is where it can really apply to any career, every single career, every single profession, every single workplace, right? Every single, whether you're in academia or a commercial environment or a government environment, international environment, there's always going to be a culture. There's going to be a lingo, right? Or a dialect, terminology, words that are used, and I'll share some examples in just a couple minutes here. But every single opportunity to ingrain yourself into that process is really interesting. And I listed on there micro learning opportunities, baby steps, little one step at a time. And you don't have to grow a career or get a degree and say, oh, okay, I'm going to do this in the next year. Maybe it's going to take 2-3 years. Maybe it's going to take you 5 years, depending on where you are. Understanding terminology and language. The second bullet here, I maybe should have put this first. Very important to always clarify the context in which you're addressing a situation. The background, the scenario, all the affected parts of the conversation, knowing what the context is, the context in which terminology is being used, in which questions are being asked, that's going to frame the whole structure of how you respond, right? Because you can assess, a situation can be very similar one from the other, except for very minor nuances, in which case those nuances may be what direct you in a totally different path. It makes communication much easier. And let's look at the next slide, Lisa. Purposely, I didn't put too many words on this slide. The language, and in this case, property management, but think of it again, plug in whatever your career path is, whatever your job title is, right? Knowing that terminology, knowing words such as, in our case, asset, compliance, stewardship, liability, materiality, risk, a whole plethora of acronyms, right? Or ROI, ILP, GPA, FAR, CAP, I mean, I could go on and on, right? All of those are important to know what they mean, but the context in which they're used, how you apply it in a different situation, how you use it, how you incorporate it in your writing and your communication. It really provides you the lens through which you look through. It can even shape your biases and your opinions on how you respond to things or how you question different processes or procedures. Also, knowing language and terminology gives you a common ground, right? Gives you a baseline to address and to identify areas of concern, areas of opportunity, etc. And it gives you, this is a term I heard a few years ago, what is the currency that you have to negotiate a situation? By currency, I mean, what is important to the other party, right? And you may be thinking at this point is, what does all this have to do with professional development, right? It shapes the infrastructure and the framework in which we can develop a path to continue developing our skills, our knowledge, our awareness, our abilities, our collaboration skills, etc. So pretty much the basis of a lot of things that we do and how we manage through our careers. Next slide, please, Lisa. All of us, regardless of what career path we're in, we have what I call a compliance framework, right? For every position, there are some underlying rules and regulations that we need to comply with. Okay. I don't like necessarily always thinking of compliance as a negative thing. Compliance sometimes is an attitude. Sometimes it's a requirement. Sometimes it is a mandate. Sometimes it is circumstantial. Compliance is being able to fulfill the expectations of an organization. And the listing you see here on the slide gives I would say, a pretty decent amount of viewing of different regulatory requirements that we have to fulfill. But this list by no means is all inclusive, depending on your organization, whether you're a state entity, a private entity, a small business, a large business, an international business. Some or all of these may or may not apply, but it gives us an idea of how complex all of our jobs can be. And also it gives us a great roadmap in terms of, in each of these areas, we can always learn more, right? We can always hone our skills. So if you're looking for an area to kind of expand your knowledge base, your area of expertise, expand collaborations with other individuals or with other teams, look for opportunities to maybe progress in your career ladder, expanding knowledge in all of these could be very, very useful place to start. Hence, a great beginning to your roadmap for your professional development. So let's take a look at what I call modifying your plan. Next slide, Lisa. So in modifying our plan, your plan individually, and by plan, I mean, what is it you're going to do? What's your priority? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 2 weeks? Okay, sometimes we don't know how far out to look for things. And sometimes things fall into our lap in a very unexpected way, right? So being ready, being prepared, not waiting for something to happen to then be ready, although sometimes it works that way, but being ready so that when opportunity comes our way, then we can hit the ground running and take it and use that as an opportunity. So I say modifying our plan. We're going to talk a few things in the next little bit here in terms of what are things that we should do to keep in mind. Okay. Next slide, please, Lisa. So first of all, generically speaking, okay, let's not forget that your professional development, our professional development, mine as well as yours, is not something that happens in 1 day, in 1 week, in 1 month, in 1 year. It happens over a lifetime. It happens over a career, a span of years. It may happen over the course of changes in jobs, changes in position, changes in lifetime, personal life situations. It's an ongoing process. You're going to have some things that are very, very detailed. You're going to have something that's hands-on. You're going to have things that are just theoretical concepts that you deal with, but together they help recalibrate and develop your resiliency, your ability to respond, okay? Your knowledge, your ability to, let's say, recuperate from something that you were involved with that maybe didn't quite go the way you planned. Okay, so part of what we're dealing with is not just learning, it's not just linear. Okay, you're not always necessarily going forward, forward, forward. Sometimes you feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Keep moving, keep that momentum. And it is our responsibility, your individual responsibility, to make sure you're building your competency levels, that you are maintaining your credentials. If you have certifications, don't let them expire. Keep them current, because it's harder to renew them once you let them expire. Keeping in mind different strategies for yourself and expanding your ability, your capacity to solve problems. Okay. Problem solving is one of the key skills. As I'm reading a lot of different articles, it's one of the key skills that your supervisors and managers look for as an ability in staff that they have, ability in part of the hiring process. Oftentimes questions come in the frame with the objective of looking, how does this person, what's their thought process? How do they analyze things? How do they solve a problem? How do they keep things, how do they keep others motivated? All those kinds of questions. So in creating your plan, next slide, Lisa. Okay. A few things to keep in mind. Okay. Focus on your objectives. In other words, what's the end game? Where do you want to end up? Is it a degree? Is it maybe just completing a certain class? Maybe it's finishing a project. Okay. Maybe it's developing a relationship or a partnership with another group within your organization. What is your objective? Okay. Again, it can be short term, it can be longer term, but what are the priorities? So if you have a list of 10 things you want to do, let's say even 5 things that you want to do over the next 6 months, okay? You may not be able to do all 5 at once. Maybe you need to bite small bites, take small bites at a time. What are those objectives? What are the priorities? Then look at what's getting in my way. What's getting in my way of being able to do this? What do I have maybe to change in my schedule? What do I have to choose in terms of sequence? Okay. What are going to be my boundaries? What am I going to be willing to do, okay, or willing to accept as part of this ongoing process? And we're all incredibly busy. You think of everyone's schedule. There's not a whole lot of downtime, although we should plan for some downtime. We all need some R&R once in a while, and it makes a big difference. But make every minute count. Every time that you're involved in something, is it going towards my goal? It's one of the underlying premises, I guess you can say, of strategic planning, of, in this case, planning your growth. Okay, what are the incremental steps? Finding your own learning style. We don't all learn the same way. Some of us are very visual learners. Some of us are very analytical. Some of us need to experience something physically. Some of us work in a combination of things. So what is not only your learning style, but if you're participating in a group activity, what is the collective learning style of the team, as well as each individual contributor to that team? Okay. And collaboration with others. No, I don't know. I can't think of one job off the top of my head where you work and you never have to collaborate with some other individual. Maybe it's short term, maybe it's long term, but the ability to collaborate, the ability to identify with whom you need to collaborate is really essential as part of a strategy, part of a tool for you to help in continuing your growth plan. And next slide, please, Lisa. Looking at then all the information we collect over time, okay, how do we bring that all together? How do we bring it home to make it feel like it's collectively have some synergy going, right, between the different things? Reaching new paths, trying to try something different. The next to the last bullet here on the slide, be curious. I would throw out a question, right, to those of you listening, and type something into the chat, please. What do you consider, what does it mean to you when I say be curious? I'd love to hear what some of you are thinking right now. I'm not physically where you are, but you know, our thought process can really share. So Lisa, I want to see some notes in the chat there in terms of what does be curious mean? Okay. And I'm not saying being nosy and watching your neighbors and seeing what they're doing, but what does be curious mean? Okay. I think that's a very, very essential aspect that everybody should have, regardless of what level you are, regardless of how inexperienced or how much of a novice, sorry about that you are. Any comments coming in at all, Lisa?
We have a curious crew here. There's ask questions when you do not understand, being open to finding new ways to do a job function, ask questions and seek answers, being willing to explore, asking why a lot, inquire about things that interest you, what would be the next step in the process, find out the why, always being open to learning and not staying stagnant, interested enough to research a topic, being curious about better ways to accomplish a process. Lots of good comments.
I love it. Excellent. And you know what? All of those are spot on. Okay? Being curious is about wanting to know more, being hungry, having a little bit of a hunger for more information, right? And part of that is developing the skill of asking good questions. Not just one question, but follow-on questions. Also trying to do your best to ask open-ended questions, so then you can get a little more information as you go through. Asking a question that is what's called a closed question, right, where the answer is just yes or no, sometimes that's really appropriate. If you're trying to pull a lot of information together and support your ongoing growth of knowledge and skill, you're going to want to ask follow-on questions, additional questions. Tell me more. Help me understand. What impact did that have? How many times did XYZ happen? What was your success rate? How do you apply this for regulation to a specific contract or scenario? So being curious is really, really essential. One of the key essential skills. And branching out, right? Getting that network going, talking to other people, looking beyond what your job description is. I think one of the most limiting things that can happen to any of us in our professional development is to sit back and say, well, that's not part of my job, so I'm not going to worry about it. Your choice, but not the best position to be in, because it's going to easily then become stagnant, and you don't want to be in that position. So much information, different ways, different delivery methods for information. So pulling that all together in a way that makes sense for you, I think is really important these days. So next slide, please, Lisa. As we start doing this, all of these activities, I would say build what I call your success profile. Okay. What do you look like on paper? Kind of a weird way of thinking things. But if someone had never met you, right, and you can say, oh, well, that's just a resume. Well, a resume is part of it, but it's not just that. It's how do you look on social media? How do you present yourself in a meeting? What is your mindset? What is your physical presence when you enter a room? How do you respond to individuals that maybe you feel a little intimidated by in terms of who you're interacting with? So building your success profile is about building your library of resources, right? Your tool set of different things, your knowledge base, your network. So I like the little note on the computer here is I design and develop experiences that make people's lives simple. You know, a lot of what we do in property management can be very complex. Okay. What is one angle that we can take to simplify matters, to make them more able to be expedited and easily resolved? So what are your tools? What are your knowledge base? Who is your network? And how are you going to develop your plan? So that's going to frame how you are viewed by others, how you present yourself to others. So next slide, please, Lisa. So in developing a plan, this was an idea that I read about recently too, that I thought was really a cool idea to share with all of you, is we also tend to be sometimes a little fearful of putting together a plan over, say, the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's like, wow, I can't even, I facetiously, and I hear this from people just kind of on a fun basis, right? Hey, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, right? How do I know what I'm going to plan for a year from now or whatever? So this one speaker that I was listening to, and sorry, I should have written their name. I forgot to do that. But they gave the idea of plan out a year at a time. Okay. Divide that time frame into quarters. So you're looking at just 3 months block of time, right? You can more easily manage your time in smaller increments to be able to be flexible and change things. And once you decide where you want to be, say at the end of 1 year, kind of reverse engineer that timeline. Okay? In order to be there, I need to do X, Y, Z. And X, Y, Z is available in these time frames. Okay? These are a few things that are going to be, that's the phrase we used a long time, over a long period of time, quick wins, right? What can I do fairly easily with little resources, a little bit of time, maybe even without any help, right? So break it down into smaller increments. That's really, really helpful. Next slide, please, Lisa. It goes hand in hand with looking at it over the course of a year. So if I were to take it down to each quarter, okay, here's a few key questions to ask yourself. And the concept here is creating, and I like this term, creating white space on your calendar. In other words, freeing up some time so then you can develop it you can dedicate it to your professional development. So here are some key things to ask yourself. Who do I need help with? You don't need to do it all on your own, right? Who do you need help with? Who do you need help from? Or maybe who do you need to help? Maybe you're part of their plan and they're part of yours. What do you need to execute that plan? Do you need resources? Do you need money? Do you need time? Do you need access to certain information? Do you need someone else to take on part of a project so you can have a little more activity? Okay. How does it fit into what you're already planning? Okay. 24 hours in a day, all of us have the same amount of time. How we allocate that time is really up to us to manage. Okay. Maybe there's some things you can shift around in your schedule a little bit. Move things up to a different time of the day. That can help you free some time up later. But you're going to need to find at least small increments of time. If you're taking a class, take one class at a time. If you're working full time, I know of some people that are working full time and they're going to school full time. Wow, that is a lot to juggle. Can be done, difficult. Remember, one of the questions you need to ask yourself is, what is your level of commitment to creating and developing and executing your professional development plan? Okay. So there are some skills that we can and we should improve upon, and they're listed on the next slide. Some of them, again, these are not all inclusive, but some key things, okay? Skills that we can and should improve upon. And, you know, this little graphic here, sometimes we win, and originally it said sometimes you lose. It's not necessarily about losing, it's about learning from that experience, okay? Developing your resiliency, taking that as a lesson learned. Sometimes we can look back and just laugh at things. Other times we go, what in the world was I thinking, right? But use each thing as an opportunity as a stepping stone to move forward. So here's a few things to keep in mind to always improve, no matter what you're doing. Okay? Your mindfulness, your empathy with people, understanding, being thoughtful in your process. And this doesn't mean you're going to be, you know, a sweet, sweet, sweet all the time and, you know, all the whatever phrasing you want to use for that. But just being mindful, being cautious, being appreciative of what is available to you and what you can provide to others. Collaboration, partnering, sharing information, not just, oftentimes I say, well, you know, I'm kind of afraid to share this information because maybe that means somebody else will be taking my job. You know what? Sharing your information so then someone else maybe can learn it and then you can move on to do something else you really want to do or move in the career ladder. Okay. Open communication. Communication that could be a whole topic all on its own. Written communication, verbal communication, online presence, communicating with those that maybe English is not their first language, cultural communication, physical presence in terms of a room, how you communicate there. Sometimes you don't even have to say a word and you are communicating in different ways with your body language, with your approach, with your appearance. So many different aspects relative to that. Resilience, I mentioned that a few minutes ago, kind of bouncing back, okay? Not considering a situation a loss or a failure, although you may say, well, it didn't meet the success criteria I had in mind, but what did happen? How can I change it for next time? How can I use that as a trial basis of moving forward? And again, the whole notion of being curious, right? Asking questions. In this case, it's more like, hey, what did I learn from that situation? How could I have done that better? What could we have done differently? Should I have planned something the timing maybe was off? What other approach could I have taken? So that gem of the concept of curiosity is really, really important. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on skills that we can improve? I'll give the audience just a few seconds again to type it in the chat. Lisa, you can do that while you move to the next screen. All right. Any thoughts from those out there? Let's see how well the coffee has kicked in for the day. Any thoughts coming in, Lisa?
Technical skills.
Technical skills, yes.
A little
Technical skills, but go ahead.
Writing skills, grace.
Yes, and as I mentioned, writing skills is part of that whole communication aspect. And it's not just the mechanics of writing, the tone of how you write, the context. What do you include in an email? And you would say, oh yeah, well, an email is very basic. How you address it, what you put in the subject line. Do you give enough clear information, or do you provide a mishmash of so many different topics? Try and keep it singularly focused in terms of a topic. If there's a deadline due, be clear about that. So there's lots of aspects of each of these things that we can fine tune and be part of our then what I call personal toolkit, right? Our skills all build together to then become our library of abilities, if you will, to do what we need to do, regardless of what position we're in. So here's some ideas in terms of what things can I have in my library of tools, right? In your toolkit, meaning think of a toolkit, right? It has various different things in it: a wrench, a hammer, a screwdriver, or whatever. If you're in a different category, if you are in terms of a professional, what software things do you know? What computer systems are you familiar with? What information can you train others on or provide education? Friend of mine is a really proficient seamstress. Okay, her toolkit is all about designing in different aspects there. So again, these things can apply to each and every area and aspect of our lives. Notice on here, ability to negotiate. Okay. Every conversation potentially is a negotiation. If you're trying to persuade someone to follow a rule, to follow a regulation, to correct an error that they made, okay, part of that is a give and take in negotiation. You may know that you have to reach a certain decision, but how you get there could be a very different path. Analytical capacity. Not all of us are analytical. Not all, and I don't mean analytical just in terms of numbers, right? Sometimes we tend to think of being analytical in terms of, hey, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a super whiz with Excel or anything like that. But analytical is more about assessment, assessing a situation, analyzing someone's behavior, analyzing their reaction, analyzing, looking back towards a situation that maybe didn't quite go right. Okay, you're analyzing and looking back. So in various different ways. And getting back to the whole writing and communication, tact and diplomacy, right? We forget sometimes, and sometimes we're very direct. This is also a cultural thing. In some cultures, individuals are very direct, right to the line, bottom line. They're not into the casual conversation that kind of leads into a decision, right? So all of those are factors in the process. Nearing the bottom of this list, motivated self-starter. Remember, I'm using the word in red. You, your plan, your trajectory, your skill building, you have to keep yourself self-motivated. So small rewards along the way. Attaboys, right? Hey, I accomplished this. I did it on time. I did it per my plan. Okay. Be self-motivated. You're not always going to have someone there to push you along the way. So looking at that, let's look at a few characteristics that an individual, I think, should have or should demonstrate on the next slide, Lisa, please. In terms of as you're involved in your professional development. Okay. So here's some things. I just mentioned self-motivated. Being willing to learn. Okay. Willingness to learn, not begrudging that, oh, I have to learn this because, it's part of my job type thing. But that eagerness, again, it comes down to that curiosity, right? What are you going to be able to get out of it? How can you use this better going forward? All of those things are so important in terms of characteristics that we can demonstrate. Integrity, doing the right thing the right way the first time, okay? Keeping things on the up and up, for lack of a better term, right? But integrity, and I think that's more and more every day important these days, particularly things like using AI, et cetera. And I'm not saying AI is not good. It's fabulous. It's got some incredible potential, but there's also the ability to glean information that isn't quite useful in the right way, or maybe misusing it. So just be mindful. Staying calm under stress. Wow. Every single day. I know lately we have had what I call regulatory whiplash. And this is not a political statement of any kind. It can happen at any point in time. And when things change, okay, things are going to change. Maybe you have new management in your organization. Maybe your supervisor or your group is now realigned on the org chart. So all of those things can cause stress and confusion. So staying calm, not having a knee-jerk reaction, always looking back to what is your plan, circling back to the concept of professional development. What is your plan? Where do you hope to be? And how does today fit into that plan? Solution-oriented, I mentioned that a few minutes ago. Being able to decipher a situation, being able to provide recommendations and guidelines, those are all very important aspects of what a property person or a professional development plan includes. So let's look at one of the biggest challenges that I think we face today if we're not physically in the office. Okay. Visibility, maintaining visibility. It's really easy, or much easier, to see what people are doing, how they're doing it along the way if they're physically present, right? But if you're not, and on sessions like today, where oftentimes you're not even on camera, you're just hearing a voice, right? So one of the challenges we face is gaining and maintaining that visibility. And that's where the whole aspect of communication comes into play, okay? You can still maintain that visibility by pick up the phone, talk to people. Don't just go online and send a message. Keep your camera on. A lot of times I've seen meetings where people opt to have their camera off, for whatever reason, but, being visible on camera is one really easy way to stay visible. Participating in projects, volunteering for things. Don't wait for the right time. I'm not quite ready yet. This is too late. It doesn't fit on my schedule. Sometimes you need to take an opportunity and run with it a little bit. And in the next slide, sometimes this is where we end up, right? Leaving our comfort zone. We're used to doing things a certain way. We're used to working where, hey, I know I'm comfortable answering all these questions, but sometimes you need to step back and say, okay, let me stretch just a little bit more, or changing a perspective, understanding, okay? Don't resist change. Change is always going to happen. Okay? Be willing to understand why, to expand beyond your this is my job, if you will. Okay? You'd be surprised how that then ebbs and flows and it affects all the other aspects of what you do. And along the way, you're going to have the opportunity to say, wow, I'm really glad I did this. Or can you imagine how well that would have worked if I had done X, Y, Z? So leaving your comfort zone, to me, is a really important part of your professional development progression, if you will, because some things are going to make us a little nervous. Some things are going to make us kind of wonder where I went in the path. Public speaking is a great example. I know a lot of individuals say, I would never get up in front of a group or lead a conversation in a meeting. Once they kind of edge their way into it a little at a time, that comfort level comes into play. So look for opportunities to leave your comfort zone just a little bit. And then beyond that, Lisa, let's look at what happens there. We can become a subject matter expert. Okay? We're stepping out of our comfort zone a little bit, expanding in maybe one or two particular areas. You don't have to be a specialist or an expert in everything. Okay? Maybe you can be, but generally speaking, pick an area of focus. Okay? Excel in your knowledge for that particular area. Okay? If, the FAR, for example, Federal Acquisition Regulation, it's huge. The whole concept of that is very complex. Is there an area that you can be a specialist in, that you can really be an expert in interpreting and applying it? Again, problem-solving proficiency, knowing how to take a regulation and apply it to a certain situation. And look what came up on this slide again. Be curious, right? Ask questions. How does this apply? In what circumstances does it work? What do I need to do to understand this better? Okay. What case law applies in this particular case? Okay. Ultimately, you're going to become recognized as maybe not the worldwide leading authority, but within your organization, who is the person that's the expert in this topic? Okay. Is it John? Is it Mary? Is it Dr. So-and-so? Is it Miss So-and-so? You know, who's going to know the most within the context of your particular organization? And again, look at the bottom line here. Early on, we talked about this is a continuous experience, right? So continuing to grow your knowledge as a subject matter expert is a continuing experience. So the next step in what you can do is become a mentor or a mentee. By the way, you know what? I went forward, and Lisa, I didn't go back to you. Did we get any comments to my last question to the audience?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Just want to be sure I'm on a roll here and didn't want to ignore anyone that had made a comment. So if you are not a mentor, consider getting a mentor. Some of us may have more than one mentor. Okay? And sometimes you have a mentoring relationship for a few months at a time. It doesn't mean that you have to have one person as kind of your brain trust, right? Your guide, your leader in sharing information forever and ever. It's going to change and morph over your career, over your lifetime. But helping that relationship grow, whether you're a mentor to someone or a mentee getting information, it's a partnership, right? You help develop competencies. Sometimes what a mentor can do for you too is just be a sounding board, okay? Run scenarios by them. What do you think about this? I'm considering XYZ. What's been your opinion? What's your observation? Oftentimes the mentor is in a great position to give you very objective feedback, okay? Feedback is sometimes a difficult thing for us to accept, but feedback is great, okay? Consider feedback as another tool, a way of guiding through your path of development, okay? Providing information, hearing more. What do you sound like to other people? Do you use a certain phrase a lot? Do you do a certain thing a certain way? Listen to yourself in a recording. That's always kind of a scary thought, right? But even look at that and provide yourself feedback. Sometimes others make assumptions, or we make assumptions about others that can be clarified in this mentor type relationship. And you may have more than one mentor at a time. You may be a mentor to several individuals at a time, but that one-on-one relationship is really key. It's an opportunity to just kind of let your hair down and ask questions as you go along the way. So as we move forward, we want to be sure and position ourselves for potential growth. Okay. Next slide, please, Lisa. Okay. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, don't wait until an opportunity falls in your lap. Be ready for an opportunity to fall into your lap, right? Be as clear as you can on where you want to be. Be intentional about what you do and the decisions you make. In other words, do they fit my plan? Do they fit in my strategic plan? Is this within the priority, or do I have to kind of set that aside and go forward? Okay. Keep in mind taking care of yourself along the way. Okay. Having a little R&R, a little bit of rest, sitting back. Maybe something occurred that you weren't really excited about. Okay. And that's kind of knocked you on your knees and say, oh man, where do I go from here? Think about what you're learning from that situation. On the other hand, and I say this one carefully, flaunt your strengths, and I don't mean be arrogant about it, okay? But if you have strengths, offer help, offer to share, offer to guide others, offer to participate in a project. Start taking things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone, okay? Use your abilities to help others, and you'll be surprised how much that helps you, okay? It also will lead to a lot of really good positive relationships, maybe even a mentor-mentee relationship. So in positioning yourself to be ready, okay, next slide, please, Lisa, you will also be preparing yourself for advancement, okay? Like I said, being ready before the opportunity arises. Be proactive. Practice professionalism. Wow, what does that mean? Mindset. attitude, okay, perception, speech, okay. Be mindful of the audience that you're interacting with. What is the culture of the organization? Okay. What are the requirements if I want to move from job A to job B? What are the requirements of job B so I can build those skills and be ready when an opening comes up that I might be one of the qualified candidates? Now, bear in mind, I'm not saying do this XYZ and you are guaranteed to get that next job. You still need to work through the application and whatever process your organization has. But you know what? Having the right skill set, the right mindset, the right network, the right partnerships will go a long way to prepare you for whatever advancement you choose. And by the way, sometimes advancement is not up the ladder, okay? Advancement could just be a lateral move into an area that is just a little bit different, that challenges you to get you out of a routine that you're so used to doing that it becomes automatic, right? You want to always be kind of fresh and be able to make decisions and look at things from a new way of life. So part of all this might in fact just lead you into a leadership position. Next step, please. Next slide, please, Lisa. Okay. So if you are moving from a team participant or an individual contributor, perhaps your professional development plan is to move into leadership or management. Okay. So why? Okay. Don't sabotage by, say, your brand presence. By that I mean be careful in how you perform, be careful in how you react, be careful in how you kind of mumble a comment in the wrong time or place, right? Because another thing I learned in a class I took recently is your reputation precedes you. Okay? People don't even need to know you personally to have heard of your reputation and your skills and your abilities. So you don't want to do anything to sabotage that. We talked a couple minutes ago about visibility. Okay? Stay visible, stay up to date with trends, etc. Keep learning, keep an open mind. Next step, next slide. I keep saying next step, Lisa. So now you know what I mean by next step. If you're a manager, okay, or if you are, again, moving in that progression, what's your strategy? Okay. If you are planning to become a supervisor or manager, that could be, a 1, 2, 3 year process. It doesn't happen just overnight. Keep assessing yourself and your skills. Next slide, please. Okay. So in that whole process of moving up a career ladder, okay, you're going to have to develop a way to assess your skills. How do your skills today meet where you need to be, say, 6 months or for a year from now? Okay. One key thing on this slide that I would say is try as best you can to eliminate your biases. Biases, I always get confused on saying that. And by that, I mean, keep objective about the things that you deal with. All of us have bias. Bias is, in my mind, one way of thinking of it is nothing more than a perspective. Our perspective on something, our opinion, our background knowledge about a situation. So try and keep those as neutral as you can and clarify what your criteria is or expectations are within your organization. Because if you clarify those and express them to your management, they can and often will commit to helping you move along that trajectory. So, next slide, please. One way to think of your professional development is different types of certifications. NPMA offers, of course, property management or fleet management certifications, but there are many others out there that may also be very important. Certifications give you a good professional recognition. Also, if you are certified, put that information in your signature block for your organization. Okay? Oftentimes, an organization will provide you funding to obtain or renew certifications. So very, very worthwhile. Next slide, please. Just as a quick overview, comment on NPMA certification, there's different levels, 3 different levels, 2 different tracks. Property management, fleet management, specialist, administrator, and manager. much more detail in there on the website, but just wanted to throw that out there because it's just an example of a type of certification. Next slide. NPMA offers many, many other resources. You can hit the down arrow, Lisa, and just keep on going. There's a number of things that are going to come up on the screen. I'm not going to talk about them in each individually, but just keep on hitting that arrow. As you can see, there's a lot of different resources that are available to all NPMA members, which is a great organization. The opportunity to network, to communicate, the opportunity to use these, keep going, Lisa, is really, I don't want to say endless, but there's a long line there of things that you can accomplish and use as your resources. Keep going, you're getting there. Very good. I think there's 2 more on there. Keep going. 1 more. There you go. So, not all inclusive, but important. Nope, you're good. Keep going. So I want to wrap up. There's a few slides here, and I'll go briefly over them. I like to look at professional development as the gift that keeps on giving. Okay? It's something where you build along the way, and it becomes a great resource for you. So it can be a very formal planned process. It can be something very informal that just kind of happens along the way and becomes very, very built into your day-to-day routine. But let's look real quick at what some of the benefits are of continuously developing yourself. Next slide, please. And just keep hitting the down arrow, Lisa. There you go. So first of all, I think professional development will give us all different levels of confidence, credibility, those certifications, right? Expertise, being a subject matter expert. Okay? It continues to develop our abilities, but moreover, all of these is the perception that others have of us as they see us continue with that commitment. Next slide, please, Lisa. Then we have the gifts of efficiency and productivity. Knowing more, knowing better how to do something, taking ownership of what we do, being problem solvers, understanding the bottom line in an organization, working more individually, better ability to be efficient and productive. Next slide, please. Professional development, the gifts of enthusiasm and re-energizing. You know, it's so cool to learn something new. It's so cool to reach that milestone, to reach that goal, okay? To really be planning on what you're doing and being able to do that and expanding what things you are, taking charge. Remember, you're in the driver's seat. Next slide, please. From a managerial standpoint, staff retention, okay? Professional development is something that many, many staff look for as a benefit. How am I able to continue to develop within my organization? And as a manager, 1 more slide here, the gift of talent management, being able to develop your staff, being able to promote from within, portability, moving from one position to another, okay? All of that, this is a result of professional development, of developing your skills, growing your knowledge base, staying visible, all of it together really ties in very well. And to do this, let's keep in mind just a few things. Lisa, almost at the last slide, we're right on time. Just keep hitting that down arrow, okay? Things to keep in mind. Okay, stay right there, Lisa. Consider challenging, go back, the status quo, okay? Ask questions, be curious. Remember to adapt to things that are around you, okay? Be active in associations or classes or something like that. Promote your profession, whatever it may be, within your organization. If it's property management, keep promoting it and build awareness. And be an ambassador, okay? Be a PR person for your organization. So some things to keep in mind. And next slide, please. As a closing comment, I would say, remember, it's about you taking control of your career, right? Remember that very first slide? We had a road to follow, okay? Following your roadmap, building your own roadmap, managing it 1 year at a time, 1 quarter at a time, maybe 1 week at a time. We can do it. We're all busy, but we can find those little increments of time to be successful. Any other questions? Lisa, I think we are at the last slide now, if I remember right. So I appreciate this opportunity. Hopefully I have shared a little bit with you, a slightly different perspective on professional development, but staying sharp, okay? In a competitive environment, staying sharp is really essential. So these are some things, hopefully now you have a few more things in your personal toolkit that can help you do that. Any other questions, Lisa?
No questions, but lots of gratitude and thanks.
Thanks. And thanks for the opportunity. Scott, thank you for the invite. And, you know, to all of you that are participating, be sure and always grow. Okay?
Hey,
Keep learning.
Ivonne, there's a really interesting question out here. You ready? What was one of the best single decisions you made for your career?
Oh, wow. Moving into a work environment that I had no clue what it was. I think being brave enough, and it wasn't me doing, actually moving from a for-profit to a nonprofit, moving to Stanford. I remember my husband telling me at the time, says, you know, what have you got to lose? Try it. And it has been one of the best decisions of my life. But it was really fearful for a while there in thinking about it and making that decision. So getting out of your comfort zone, I think, is one of the most important things. At least for me, that's the way it's worked. But
somebody wanted to know how you got into this kind of work, into this role.
Oh my gosh, that's a lifelong story for another day. I was a teacher and had taken a leave of absence to go overseas for a job that once I got there, I decided it wasn't for me. So came back, had to find a job, and kind of speeding to further on, a friend of mine said, hey, we need a tagger. I said, I have no idea what a tagger is, but I need work. And I was out there putting barcodes on equipment and started from there, and kept curious, asked questions, looked at a process, asked to be involved in other things, and had a great mentor, and just you know, just wanted to learn more about what the whole aspect was. So be glad to share with you what my overall trajectory has been, but that's it kind of in a nutshell.
All right. Ivonne, if you have never done it, that would be a great story for the property professional sometime.
I actually sent some notes to Doug Getz about that. We've been talking about that recently. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
But NPMA played a great part in that. Without NPMA, I would not be where I am today, honestly. So
perfect. Thank you so much for doing this. I don't know if Scott's still with us, but I will thank you. And let everybody know that this will be posted on YouTube. Before I close this, if you haven't done it already, download the handout of the slides. And otherwise, watch for those CEUs to pop up on your transcript. So, all right.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.